Wildman of Wildman Athletica, and of course we have a plane flying overhead at this exact moment. And today we are going to answer some questions and talk about a few upcoming events and discuss what's happening in the next couple of months before we start answering questions. We recently did a seminar up at FlowShala with staff, Mace, and Heavy Club. Went very, very well. We are going to have another seminar up at FlowShala September. I think it's September 22nd. That one, I believe we're going to change the focus a little bit, and we're going to focus more on Heavy Club and Mace. We're still working on the program layout for that. So when we do these things, we write them and we lay it out hour by hour, minute by minute, as all good engineers probably should do, so that we know exactly what the goal of each 30-minute block is throughout the time, so that we don't waste anybody's time. The goal is never to waste anybody's time. The goal is always to provide the maximum value in the least amount of time, just as a general design strategy, and specifically myself as a company, I'm always trying to provide the maximum value in the least amount of time. We have other seminars coming up. I believe that we are going to do one. We have the one in Thailand locked down. Date, I believe, is the first week of January. That is going to be a bigger one. It's going to be 5 days. So we're going to get a lot of fun stuff done during that training session. And then I believe we are going to book a seminar. We have 3 days or something like that booked in London. We're still working on the details for that. But for people in London and Europe, you know, you're a train ride away from most of Europe at that point. And I'm fairly familiar with London, having lived there for 2-ish years. So we're going to be in my old area because I want to go to my favorite restaurants, my favorite pubs and everything while I'm there. And I want to go to the British Museum because I love the British Museum. I've been there dozens of times, and every time I go to London, I have to, a couple more sections I have to finish in there. I go through the museums and I go through them section by section, do one room a day, stop, examine everything, read everything, do the tours, do all this stuff. So we're going to have some built-in learning opportunities for a bunch of fun stuff in the new year. And we are in discussions with Maurizio of HydroCore and Will Safford of BJJ Fanatics and Strong and Fit to try to set up a thing in Italy next year. Once again, I love Italy. I've worked on several movies in Italy, and I've spent, you know, not a lot of time there, but more time than people spend on vacation. You know, 6 weeks here, 8 weeks there, floating around between Rome and a lot of coast time down on the southern coast by Capri, accent slide, my bad. Yeah, so we're going to try and set that up. Small town on the western coast. So we're working on getting details figured out for that. I would like to do a whole week just on my own at that location and put it around this other fitness festival that is happening there, so that people could turn it into a 2-week training excursion. But we're working on that right now. Good, moving forward. Oh, we have some comments coming in. Hello, everybody. I think sound seems good. Yeah, let's talk about real quick what we're doing with YouTube and what we're doing with programming, and then we'll get to questions. For YouTube, we're working on our rebuilding series. We're working on the introduction to kettlebelling, because I don't really see anybody having done just an instructional series. And I think we're going to try and fill that out with like 100 videos. And we're trying to train it one drill at a time. And if people see drills that they think I've missed, feel free to message me. We bumped our program already because somebody reminded me of a newspaper clean drill that I haven't done in 12 years. So we made a video and inserted it into the playlist. I think it's today or tomorrow it's going to come out to help people work on their basic technique. The whole goal is to make sure that people have a way to start training from the ground up. They know absolutely nothing about kettlebells, and they want to get what they want out of fitness training. And we're designing it in that way because we're trying to do the most good in the least amount of time. People can really absorb information that one video, one drill at a time, and we repeat basic concepts over and over and over again, so that when people start to watch that, they can watch it kind of straight through and get a really good understanding of kettlebelling, so that when they go get a trainer, they already know tons of stuff that's going to be told to them, and they are more likely to get what they want out of the time they spend paying a trainer. Or it allows people to self-coach, which is what I am most interested in people doing, is learning to self-coach. That is how I learned kettlebells. I learned kettlebells by hammering through tons of different programs over the course of 10 years, and self-coaching for the most part before you even go to seminars. Spend 2 years self-coaching and working on your basics before you ever go to your first seminar. So we're trying to lay it out for people in that way. What else are we talking about? Programs. Krav program should be out. The Krav Get Up 1 program, to be specific, should be out hopefully tomorrow, but not quite sure yet. We're still finishing the final edit on the PDF. The video has been done and uploaded for a month, but me getting the time to work on the PDF is the real problem. Currently, we're working on shooting the Turkish Get Up Mastery program, and this morning I just started finishing the two-handed club program. All the footage for that will be done by next Friday, and then it will go into edit. There are 7 levels in that program, 8 exercises, so it is approximately 3 times bigger than the other two-hand program that we have released through Strong and Fit. And that's the idea. We're building it out so that people can learn to move better with less equipment. Expanding the movements and expanding the levels allows people to push what they can do with each weight further and further. So you'll get at least 3.5 times more out of each weight that you possess. So we're always doing the math to try to create the absolute most value in the least amount of time, because I am obsessed with that. I am a nerd, I'm an engineer, and I grew up without resources. So the goal is always to provide the best answer with the least amount of money put in. Let's start going to questions now that we've rambled on for 7 minutes. Sal sings bass. Sal sings bass. Sal sings bass. Any tips on hip impingement? I have issues with my left hip when doing right-armed windmill or bent press. Do you mean in the back of the hip or the front of the hip? Usually when people say hip, they mean the front of their hip. But of course, I would immediately recommend your hip mobility drills, starting with windshield wiper, going to shin box, hand down shin box, hand forward shin box, arm thread to elbow, arm thread to shoulder, and then 4 count, and then half kneeling position, hip circles, minute clockwise, minute counterclockwise for each hip, focusing on not skipping any portion of the hip movement, and then having people build out their half kneeling clean and press series to help them isolate each hip before working on something like windmill, side press, or bent press. And then of course you would need to do hamstring movement as well, and that would be based on diving dolphin and bear squat for absolute sure. What did we get there? We got rotation of the hip in 5 exercises. We got half kneeling rotation of the hip in 2 directions minimum. And then we got hamstring mobility. Usually for the most part, that solves most people's hip problems, but I don't know. I've never seen you move, so that might not solve them, but that's a really, really solid place to start. The Turkish Get Up program that we just finished shooting yesterday is a whole pile of breakdowns in the half kneeling position to help people work on that specifically. When we think about training, we always think about trying to get people to stand all the way up first, because that's the thing that really defines us as humans evolutionarily. Stand all the way up, walk and carry things in one hand, and then do swinging movements with levers. We start standing up, so we always start with like swings and clean and press to build our foundation, but then we start breaking it down into that half kneeling position because it helps people isolate one hip at a time. We're still working on vertical spine and windmills, but we're doing it from the half kneeling position so that your body can't twist away from one hip when you're standing. When you're standing, you can escape sometimes, and your body will avoid things that don't want to move. So we change that base of support to half kneeling position, and we run through a whole pile of drills in order to help people learn to move each individual hip better. I think I just answered your question in about 4 major ways. So yeah, that should work for you in the long run. If it doesn't, we can always come up with something else. Bernard Jurkovic, hello from Croatia. Awesome. Croatia, I believe, has some of the most beautiful beaches. I got to get there someday. It's on my list. I was supposed to go in 2020, and obviously that didn't happen because everything was canceled that year. So I missed my big planned Croatia trip that I had been looking forward to for 2 years. Croatia. Yeah, I'm thinking the right spot, right? Croatia? Yeah, I think I'm thinking the right spot. Morning from Port Moody, British Columbia. Awesome. Love British Columbia. I think it's one of the prettiest places in the world. And I hope to be able to get back up there. I hope to be able to swing into Vancouver in September for a couple of days, but that's always up in the air. It's always based on a shifting schedule. I love Vancouver as well. I've spent a bunch of time in Vancouver. We filmed Star Trek 3 there, so we spent months there, living like right downtown in the downtown district by, what is that, the Shangri-La Hotel, and right there on that main street. Great food. Some of the best food in the world is in Vancouver on that 1/2 mile street. Jack Castro, hello. There we go. Mahender Yasar. My screen just went dark. I don't know what happened with that. Let me try and pump it back up. Did the light behind me shift? Is that what happened? Did my screen get dark? Am I being backlit? Cool, let's find that spot. Mahender Yasser, depending on where you're from. When to begin kettlebell trainings for kids? There's a lot of differing opinions on this. Hardstyle is obviously not needed for kids. Hardstyle is something that you teach to adults to teach them how to fire their body correctly to create maximum tension. Kids can start very young, but for the most part, if you're starting training kids, I would put them in something that's very complex movement training first. Put them in gymnastics and put them in martial arts. The more complex the martial art, the better. I love something like wushu because the stepping patterns are crazy, but then they would also need to do something like jujitsu, like wushu and jujitsu, 2 or 3 days a week of wushu or traditional kung fu, because the stepping patterns, the turning patterns, the holding on to weapons, all these complex movement patterns are really good for the development of a kid's brain. And then wrestling or jujitsu of some type helps kids learn how to contend with somebody who's not agreeing with them. The problem with doing something like wushu or a form-based martial art is it teaches them how to step, but it doesn't teach them how to contend. Contending is very important for kids, learning to push and pull and learning to not be dicks, learning that there's always somebody stronger than you, and if you're an asshole as a kid, you'll get told really quickly and you'll get put down. I think all of that is super important for kids. And then I would put kids into something like light mace swinging before I put them into kettlebells. You can start kettlebells very young, but it's just not necessary. Kids would start with something more like sport style because they have a long period of time. They don't need to create that maximum tension. They could work on flow-based arts, juggling movements and stuff like that, but it's not super necessary in the beginning. I think kids work a lot better working on something like Mace first, because they really should do martial arts and learn staff, and they should learn Chinese big sword, which is really machete, and they should learn to throw axes, and they should do that stuff first, because those are the real basic human movement patterns. Load can come later on for the most part, but they can start really at any point. Kids in the past, historically, used to start farming at the age of 5 and carrying stuff. The whole point of kettlebelling is really to help people build work capacity, but when kids are really young, like say 5 to 12, I would let them build work capacity through movement complexity. And then, somewhere around the age of 12 to 14, I would let them start doing something like kettlebells. But it's going to be not hard style. It's not going to be about max weight. It would be about endurance movement and breathing patterns. And that's just my opinion. My opinion is that hard style is there for adults to learn how to correct things that they may have, movement patterns that may have been knocked off by living in the modern world. Standing all the way up, squeezing your legs as hard as possible, squeezing your glutes and pressing a weight. A kid should just learn to do handstands, in my opinion. But yeah, so I would put kids into kettlebells later. Put them in gymnastics, put them in wrestling, put them in martial art, let them learn to use staff, let them learn to use single-sided sword, let them learn to throw things, then put them into something like Mace, which is really something like horse cutter or Kwando and martial arts, because once again, they'll start to swing weights, and those are the primary movement patterns. Let them play sports, and then somewhere around the high school age in America, that's 9th grade, what's that start at? Like 13, 14? Then I think you could put them into something like sports style kettlebell training with get-ups and all that other stuff, but focus on juggling. Super long answer. Temple Fitness training question. You briefly mentioned that doing swings without stopping. I don't recall exactly how long you said it had to be would change you on a cellular level. Could you elaborate on this? Yes. Yes, I can definitely elaborate on this, Temple Fitness. So in the modern world, we have kind of a weird view of fitness. So there's this idea that you need to work on absolute strength. And this is actually a really good idea. The absolute strength idea came from a time when people really worked for a living. So if you go back 100 years, 50% of the population is agrarian, and they're working with their hands every day and they're carrying things. So for the most part, they're getting conditioning just by doing physical labor every day. Farmer's carry is called farmer's carry because that's how you used to carry things back in from the field. If you had an orchard full of apples, you would spend, at harvest season, you would spend all day filling up a bushel of apples, carrying one in each hand and walking it back to the barn. And you would just do back and forth all day, farmer's carry all day. People used to stack hay all day. Like I've stacked hay for 14 hours at a time, where you're picking up something that's 80 to 90 pounds from one side, rotating to the other and putting it down and then stacking it up over your head. And it's this constant rotated movement with these, pretty serious weights for most people in the modern world. And then you had things like grass cutting, where you would rotate and use a scythe and you would cut hay and it would stack in one corner, and then you would come by with a fork and you would fork it up. And so all the basic human movement patterns were covered for the most part by people just living a more natural life. So strength training came in because you didn't need to spend a lot of time working on your conditioning. Your conditioning was there. Strength training came in and you just picked up something to see how heavy the maximum thing you could pick up is. You see examples of this in the old stone lifting from the British Isles, where around Scotland there are these old famous named stones. You see the same thing in like Iceland, Greenland, Iceland. where there are named stones and people would be able to pick up these stones and carry them through specific routes without putting them down. People used to work on max strength because they got all the rest of their movement from daily living. We don't have that so much anymore because we don't carry things in the modern world. We put things in the car, we drive someplace, we get them out of the car, we walk them inside. Nobody's farmer carrying 2 bags of grain a mile anymore. Nobody's farmer's carrying a bale of hay on their shoulder 800 yards in from the field. So we need to go back to rebuilding that endurance weightlifting, which is completely left out of modern training. When you go to the gym, I was just at Gold's Gym in LA last week. I go in and I sign up at gyms because I want to see what's going on in gyms. And I got to tell you, Gold's Gym downtown on 7th Street used to be awesome. It used to be full of really good, healthy looking people 15 years ago. Now it is not looking good. Like, everybody is doing the machines, but nobody can stand up. Like, it's a real issue. People are doing the machines and, like, you see the guys are really strong, like right up here, because all the machines emphasize that big pec right there. But none of them look like they can pick anything up. There were 3 guys, I counted 3 guys out of the hundreds of people in that gym who looked like they could pick something up. Kettlebelling, we start with hard style and we limit the amount of time we're holding the weight because we're trying to rebuild fundamental strength patterns. We're trying to rebuild the swing, which is an endurance deadlift. Instead of doing 1 to 5 reps, we're doing 10 sets of 20, 20 sets of 20, and we're rebuilding our intermediate weight swinging hip snap. We're rebuilding. The goal of that is to eventually get us to the point where we're strong enough and our skeleton is aligned enough that we can work on not putting the weight down again. Same thing is true of clean and press. We go swings, we go clean and press, then we go Turkish get up, then we go Turkish get up master, then we go deck squat, front squat, then we go snatch, then we go double front squat. That's kind of a general overview of how we rebuild people in the modern world. When we learn to not put weights down, we go back to doing what humans are supposed to do, which is endurance, the unification of structure, breathing, and movement. When you're in the gym, you do, your 4 sets of 8, your 3 sets of 10, your 2 sets of 15. But that is not endurance training. That is just trying to rebuild certain muscle groups. But kettlebells are one of the best things. I think the best thing for so your body does change does change at a cellular level when you learn these things. Endurance is the unification of structure, breathing, and movement. And eventually we just have to work. We build up with hard style until we rebuild our skeletal structure, and then we go back to lifting, we go back to lighter weights, and we work on not putting them down for long periods of time. And we start with just like 10 minutes. So you eventually, in the swing program, right, we take, and the goal is to get people up to at least, gentlemen, at least a 32K for 10 sets of 20. That's kind of our bare minimum that we need people to do in swings. For ladies, it varies greatly depending on frame size, 5'2" versus 5'10". It's a huge range. So it could be 10 sets of 20 with a 16, it could be with an 18, it could be with a 20. But then we want to cut that weight back down in half, and we want to go back and we want to work on doing swings without putting the weight down for 10 minutes. 10 minutes is just a nice, square, easy number. I prefer 12 to 15 minutes myself because I'm really trying to push swings back up into that time frame of a reasonable 2-mile run. Just kind of a normal 2-mile run, think 7:30, not super fast, not super slow. It's not a 5-minute mile. It's not a 10-minute mile. It's right in the middle, and then doubling that for a 2-mile run. So we're trying to build back up to that time frame and build up to the point where you could do swings for that amount of time. In that amount of time, how many swings can you do in a minute? That's, what is it, about 36? So I think I'm right with that. It's about 36 with a casual pace. So we're trying to get back up to, 360 nonstop. And then if we were to extend that into the 15-minute mark, what's 360 divided by 2? 150 plus 30, 180 plus 360. 360 plus 100 is 460 plus 80 is what? 540? Did I do that right? The goal is to get back up to that endurance weightlifting. Your body does change on a cellular level, and I've not really heard a good scientific description of this. We just know that it happens. People adapt much, much better to endurance load, and everything about them changes. Their skeletal structure tends to change. Their core firing is way better for standing up, the most important human thing, and their ability to carry load goes up. So we want to get people back to the point beyond all the basics where they can not put a kettlebell down for 30 minutes at a time with, 24K for men and maybe 12 to 16 for women, depending on frame size. I'm sure that in the Eastern Bloc back during the Cold War, they did a bunch of science on this, but it's probably in Russian, and I haven't seen a good English translation of it. We just know that it happens. Keith Wycliffe, just roll every day. True, also a good idea. Just roll every day, Keith. Rolling refers to like BJJ sparring, but here you go, Keith. Standard, practice, 5-minute roll, very, very good. The problem with just rolling every day is you adapt perfectly to your sport and you get really bad at other things like standing up, right? BJJ guys are extremely good at sitting down on the ground and engaging wrestling from there. Greco-Roman would be different. All sports have different time frames. The answer of just roll every day is true. You could just roll every day. But the best trainers the best athletes in all of human history cross-train. So it would be roll every day and do 15 to 30 minutes of kettlebelling every day, or 15 to 30 minutes of club swinging every day to work on all the movement patterns that you aren't working on just rolling. And you will work on things that will help you learn to roll better. If you start rolling at the age of 5 and you roll straight through every day your entire life, that's great. But what you will notice with old martial arts guys, specifically wrestlers, is they look really beat up. Like, you can usually pick an old Japanese jiu-jitsu guy out of a crowd because of the way their body looks from taking so much impact and not doing any corrective training during the day for the most part. Some people do it very well. Chinese martial arts tend to be better at that. But think BJJ is pure sport-specific preparedness. You still need to go back and do the general physical preparedness as well to make sure things work right. Your lunge pattern stays correct after you've been slammed into the ground so many times. Your vertical overhead press, so you don't round up like boxers tend to round up. The point of general physical preparedness is that it's always there to support athletic specific preparedness. I think I over-answered that one. I always do. I get really into this and I start talking about all the fun stuff. Paul, Mark, I am doing the bodyweight program now. What is the next program? The next program is Krav 1, and it will be out hopefully tomorrow. It has been shot and edited for a month. We're just sitting here working on the PDF right now. I have some help. We're on a 2.5 week just work bender all day, every day, up at 5, in bed at 9. Wake up, shoot content, manage content, put it into the editor, start color correcting, work on PDF, work on design layout. Krav, it's just the PDF that needs to be done. We're working on the landing page this afternoon. Hopefully it will be live tomorrow, assuming everything goes correctly. It should. We only have the PDF left to do. Krav Get Up focuses on a very specific type of get up, what I consider to be the most important get up in self-defense. It's lying down flat on your back, putting a hand down, passing your leg through, and pointing your body directly at something that's coming at you. Not sideways, not kick to one side. The goal is to point everything straight ahead so that all of your weapons, as soon as you stand up, everything is pointed directly ahead to absorb force or retranslate force. That's the next program. After that will be the judo get-up program, which is just a get-up in a squat from the side position. So we're breaking all of these things down because I see people know how to do these movements, and the second they come under stress, they forget how to do them. This is something I used to see all the time when working with actors. So actors are prepared specifically for a fight scene. So they know the fight scene. They don't know what to do when anything goes wrong. So when I work with actors, I do the other stuff that's not trained by your stunt coordinator. I go in and I do reaction drills. What happens when something goes wrong? Because things go wrong and people get hurt on set a lot because they froze, they didn't know what to do, and they didn't just step out of the way. They froze because nobody trained them to process that data and then get out of the way when something goes wrong. Krav is one of those first things, those first movement patterns that I see people have a really hard time with. The second you put people under stress and you start doing unchoreographed drills, people forget which hand to put on the ground, and they almost always put the wrong hand down. Then they try to get up, then they're locked up, then they fall over, then they just get stomped in the head over and over and over again. So the Krav program is meant to help us put one hand down. This will feed in with the Turkish Get Up Mastery program because I'm trying to trick people into doing the knee pass through 10,000 times on each side so that it's impossible for people to forget under stress. This is just an overarching design goal that I have. This has nothing to do, I could write programs that were specifically about fitness or the fun programs. My programs are fun, but I'm also trying to bury something that I see as eminently useful for every human on the planet inside every program. So as these programs come out, each one is training you to do some specific thing, whether you know it or not, or whether I tell you guys about it or not. Each one has a point, and all the programs are going to go together like a giant web, because I'm trying to turn everybody into Batman secretly, or not so secretly. I guess it's not really a secret. Like The Bioneer, one of my favorite YouTube guys. God, I love the guy's editing and everything about it. I wish I had time to edit that well. He has like a bunch of videos on Batman and Batman training, and they're awesome. They're super fun videos. I'm trying to do that, but like as a 5-year program, starting from absolute zero. So what we're doing is we're laying the groundwork into an 8-year Batman program. Think of it like that. So the next one is Krav, and then it will be Judo, and then it will be Krav 2, which is a more advanced version of the Krav program, just working on movement patterns in a different way to make you even better at them. Then screwing push-up, which is rolling to the sides, I think. What's after that? And then I think we go to a classical get-up movement pattern. I think we go to Chinese push-ups. I don't know if they're still called Chinese push-ups, if we're allowed to call them that, or we call them Kung Fu push-ups, or Shaolin push-ups, or some shit now. Sorry, not supposed to swear. And then there'll be that program, and then it's going to get crazier after that. It's going to get super fun. That was my Mr. Burns evil plot plan to turn everybody who watches this channel into Batman. Yes, cackle. If you're old enough, you get the Mr. Burns joke. If you're not that old, then I don't know what to tell you. Hello from Tucson. Hello, Randy Allen, Tucson. Randy Allen says he likes the new Kettlebell basic program. We are also turning that into a trainable, repeatable training format as well. So this is the big idea. We're really trying to start people from absolute zero, everybody in the population, or 99.99999% of the population. So we're writing a block to come before swings in clean and press, and then those will feed into Turkish Get Up Master. So we are creating yet another program to help people learn to pick up the kettlebell, to not be afraid of it, so that they can get what they want out of training. But yes, Randy Allen, we are working on that. And thank you for watching that series. And tell people about it. Spread it around. I don't know. I do think that the world could be saved by just kettlebell training. Kettlebell training is cheap, right? It allows you to train wherever you're at, right? So you can train in a dusty field. You can train in a gym. You can train in a hotel room. Kettlebells don't go bad. I've seen entire houses burn down, and the only thing that was left was the kettlebell collection. Took them out, hit them with a wire brush and repainted them, and still being used to this day. So durable, and then it doesn't require you to travel. With the cost of fuel right now, I think it's very important for people to learn to not have to go someplace to take care of their own health. Yeah, like where I live in the Midwest, the nearest gym is 25 miles away. 25 miles each way is 50 gallons, or 50 miles in my truck, which is actually pretty efficient. It's an F350 that you can put 7,000 pounds in, but you're still looking at 16 miles to the gallon. So, and it's $7 a gallon for diesel. Getting to the gym back and forth is a nightmare land. It adds $150 to your budget every week. The goal is to not have to do that. You can also ride motorcycles there and everything else, but then you can't drag your kettlebell or whatever. So we are trying to make all of these things as accessible as possible, and we're trying to solve for the people who live on dirt roads more than we are trying to solve for the people with Equinox memberships. People with Equinox memberships would, of course, benefit from our training, but that's not the target audience. The target audience is me when I was a little kid. Jack Castro, Mark, it would be great if you could do the same basic series with club bells as well. It's on the list. I'm focusing on the kettlebell one right now, just because I want to. It's fun, and I really like working on the basics, and right now I think that that's the most accessible thing, so we're putting the majority of our time into that idea currently. And then in about a month, we'll start expanding it into the club one. I should probably redo Mace as well, now that I actually know how to make videos, and reorder it so that it makes logical sense. When I was making the Mace one, I was having fun with it, and so it goes in a general order, but it doesn't go in like a specific order. It kind of goes up and down with tangents in the later ones, especially like after 50. Hello to Sweden, Erik Olsen. Arkan2K. Thought that there might be a Star Trek joke in there, but I think I'm just reading too much into it. Shield cast pattern question. I heard you speak about how this pattern was tied into our breathing. Don't remember where. Could you expand on this? Yes. Shield cast is one of the primary human breathing patterns. And the shield cast is the simple version of a very big idea. Also the Mace 360. So shield cast, two-hand shield cast, two hands on the club, top hand goes past opposite ear. And that is because when we go to single arm, that's the way the shoulder works. People ask me this question a lot. Why not go this way? So that would be top hand past this ear. And it's because this movement right here is incredibly hard on people's shoulders. You can do it with a lighter fraction of what you can do this with. But this is the move in all of human history that is a shielding movement. And you'll see it directly in machete fighting. Hold a machete in your hand, block something coming at your head with a hanging block, go around the head, attack. Most basic move in Kung Fu sword fighting. Block, around the head, attack. Shield, attack. It's the exact movement of the shield cast, but the shield cast ends in order position so you can maintain balance. As you do that movement and you lift your arm up, your rib cage opens. You will be encouraged to inhale, and then as your arm comes down, you will be encouraged to exhale. So teaching somebody shield cast teaches them the piece of breathing that makes us human. And I harp on this a lot because I don't think people fully appreciate that the thumb makes us different than everything else on the planet. Closing our hand allows us to hold levers, sticks, staffs, axes, clubs, hammers have built civilization. Without this, we are nothing. And then that goes to elbow and that goes to shoulder, and it is all driven by the expansion and contraction of our rib cage, which helps us breathe. So we are learning to be breathed by the movement. People who do Asian martial arts are very familiar with this idea because so much of Asian martial arts is building spirals to help you move your rib cage to breathe and to exhale to correct time to create enough tension to create strikes. You can talk about martial arts all day, but it doesn't matter what you do. Shield cast is a breathing pattern. Breathing, opening the rib cage, but keeping the hip bowl stable, not letting it dump the lower back when you're doing that, is a very important athletic skill for humans in general. That is the way the core is supposed to work. When the weight goes back behind us, our body is being pulled into extension. Our rib cage expands. We try to inhale. As we bring our elbow down, our rib cage closes. We crush our core and we create power. And that creation of power is what allows us to drive tools, allows us to drive weapons, makes us the dominant species on the planet. So shield cast, breathing is super important, and we work on it with pullovers, two-hand shield cast, single arm shield cast, mill, reverse mill. These are all the basis of throwing patterns. Then when we get into Mace, we get into 360s, we get into 10 to 2s, we get into all that other stuff. Just by learning any club program, any Mace program, you will reinstitute basic human movement and breathing patterns, and people's health will go up, will get better. There's no two ways about it. It's impossible for it to fail as an idea, which is why I like it. And these movements are not really covered in modern training, which is shocking and horrifying to me. You know, the closest thing you get is the med ball slam. Back, inhale, exhale, slam the ball down into the ground. And that's, one version. And they do NASM level 7 power phase training or whatever that stuff is called now. Tries to get people to do it. Or you could just give them a club and teach them any of the basics, and people will learn to breathe. They will learn to stabilize their core. They will integrate their shoulder with their breathing pattern. Their hand will do what it's supposed to do. It just solves so many problems. Excellent question. Breathing is important. Shield cast teaches people to breathe on accident. I don't have to tell you anything. I have to tell you to go past your opposite ear, have your thumb touch the back of your shirt, and have your elbow end in the right spot, and people will relearn to breathe. The same thing is true that we do with swings, and we start with light weights, and we focus on the pattern, and we do a limited number of reps, and then we set the weight down. We build up our swing program, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then we go back eventually, and we learn to not put the weight down. The same thing is done with shield cast and with Mace, because eventually you should be able to do 10 minutes of Mace 360s casually, right? That is something I do for warm up in the morning. Grab a 25-pound Mace, do 360s for 10 minutes, and you have, God, the bugs out here are crazy. It rained yesterday, so the bugs are coming up out of the desert dirt. Yesterday? Day before. The Mace will cause you to be breathed. Think that you're doing 32 to 36 a minute. I like a 32 pace myself in the morning. Nice, casual, calm. Allows good elbow endpoint movement. In 10 minutes, you're doing 320 reps. That's 300 times you've moved your wrist, your elbow, your shoulder, and 300 times your core and your spine have moved in that 10 minutes. And you have exhaled 320 times every time you catch. You are awake at the end of that. That is the point. You can go about your day and do anything else in the rest of your day. And now you are set up breathing wise, movement wise, and basic human movement pattern wise to, succeed or something. Let me go down to the bottom here and see if anybody is talking about what we're talking about right now. Hello from South Korea, Stefan L. South Korea, that is awesome. Want to watch, but it's 1:40 in the a.m. and I have to get up. All right, to do a heavy club routine in the morning. Awesome, Stefan. Come back and watch it later. Brock Brown, how would you keep track of sets when doing single arm club exercises where there are no breaks? I count aloud. I make everybody I know count aloud. And I say top of and bottom of set. I always start with my weak hand so that I always know that I'm going to finish with my strong hand. It really helps you figure out when to change numbers. In minute 7 or something, when you get into the higher sets, you start to breathe and your brain will try and skip rounds. It'll try to go from 12 to 14, stuff like that. So doing things like always starting with the weak hand first, doing the strong hand second, saying top of set 1, bottom of set 1, top of set 2, bottom of set 2, etc. helps people because they hear it, they say it aloud. It also helps people focus on exhaling. So it'd be top of set 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, bottom of set 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Every time they count, they are exhaling, and therefore I know that they're breathing. Another thing that I used to do if I'm doing a crazy number, like 40, I'll drag out 40 pennies or 40 bolts out of a bolt kit, and I will pause in my rack position or whatever I'm holding in an order position, and I'll reach out with a toe and I'll slide one to the other side and I'll say it aloud. Used to use pennies. Sometimes I've seen people use poker chips. The poker chip thing is from CrossFit. I always used coins, like solid silver 1-ounce coins or something dope like that, something that's fun. And you set them up, and then you're very interested in making sure you have them all at the end because they're worth money. Or like I've used nails, I've used bolts, I've used washers, and I reach out with a toe and I slide it across, I get back to my stance and I continue moving. Eventually, you learn to count out loud and you learn to manage it by watching a clock. So each set is going to take you approximately this much time, and you know where you should be plus or minus 10 seconds at halfway through, and then at 3/4 through, and then at the end. So you map it out ahead of time and you watch the clock to make sure you're within your acceptable level of variance, to make sure you're not skipping sets. Yeah, good question. Talk aloud. Let's go back up to the top and see what questions we missed up here. Salud from Tampico. I'll have to look that one up. I'm not been to Tampico. Nayameen question. Do you have an equation for weight jumps relative to the effort of moving the weight? I.e. the weight is very easy to move and are moving that weight previously. This is a weird question because this assumes that I understand how much effort you understand how much you're putting in. Perceived effort is the only metric we have for this, and heart rate. But heart rate doesn't really work with kettlebells and clubs. It can for an advanced athlete, but in the beginning, the limiting factor is always hands. For the most part, I build my programs in such a way as to ensure people succeed. But jumping weight with a pure mathematical formula is really hard because everybody's hands are different. Everybody's connective tissue is different. So you'll notice in the programs we have alternating weight strategies, and the goal of that is some are hard and some are easy, some are hard, some are easy, some are hard, some are easy workouts. And they vary between hard and easy, heavy, light, as we talk about all the time, so that one day you're challenging your grip more and one day you're challenging it less. But we don't test max effort with kettlebells or clubs, because when you do max effort, you get hurt. It's not like max effort on a machine or in a one plane of movement exercise. If you do a max effort bench in a squat cage, if you drop it, it falls on the bars, or it should if you're setting up your bench right. So you can test max effort. With kettlebells or clubs, we test max effort through time, but we can only do that after people have done a ton of training, usually 3 years before we get to a max effort test. Because otherwise people will get hurt, because the tractionary load, people will give up holding a muscle and they'll pull their shoulder out of the socket, or they'll damage their elbow or something like that. So is there a pure mathematical way to do that? Not really. We set up that idea in the progression of training. And I do it when I look at a client based on what I've seen them do in their numbers already. And then it turns more into art and less into science. But though the up, down, the heavy, light cycle is the science part. We're trying to ensure success by doing that. Have I answered this question correctly? The point is, the more bells you have, the easier your life is. The point of, like, I'm a huge advocate now of the adjustable kettlebells, because it solves all the weird math stuff and trainer art that we used to have to do in order to help people progress. In the beginning, it was 16 and 24. And it was really hard to get people from the 16 to the 24 because there was no 20, right? We got a 20, things got way better because we got a whole nother learning cycle with the 20. The people got twice as good because they got to repeat with an intermediate weight. Then when we got the 18 and the 22, it got way better. You got the 16, the 18, the 20, the 22, and the 24. And you got the learning opportunities of those weights by repeating those programs. The more you repeat the program with more weights, the more likely you are to succeed. So I tend to view this kettlebell jump question by weight or by effort as being something that people are trying to pull in from other types of training. Like, there are ways you do that with barbell, but it doesn't work the same with kettlebell, because barbell is pure strength and kettlebell is strength endurance. So you have to train to your weakest points in kettlebells, clubs, and mace. Excellent question. I know my answer is annoying to a lot of people, but it is the truth. Think about kettlebells as less as getting to a heavyweight, and think about it more as acquiring experience. Think of it more of like a D&D experience points thing. More experience points yields better athletic outcome in the long term, which is really what happens in Olympic lifting. You know, Olympic lifting, you can go up a lot in weight in the first year, and then you spend 5 years refining your technique. Kettlebells, we just start refining our technique from day one, but we still have that 5-year plan. And the goal, it never ends with kettlebells because it's infinitely complex. Here's an interesting question. Mark Artigas Vale, a common commenter on our lives. Is it good to sleep without a pillow? Months after I started kettlebell training, started to feel more comfortable sleeping without it. Sure, if you love it, if you can do it, that's great. I'm a side sleeper, and I know I shouldn't be. Japanese martial arts training at some point should have trained me to sleep flat on my back with my head flat on the ground. But I failed that part of training, like, pretty bad. Yes, if you can sleep without a pillow, excellent, do it. If you can sleep lying down flat for the most part. For most of human history, people didn't have pillows. People slept outside on the ground, and you might shove something underneath your head if you had something. But like, there are many people and all throughout history who've walked vast distances with minimum amounts of gear, and that meant no pillow. So yes, if you can sleep without a pillow, I think it's an excellent idea. It's certainly a life skill that I think is pretty good and has been regarded as being a healthy thing by many cultures throughout history. Here we go. Ember Cord. Ember Cord. Kind of feels City of Embery there. In your experience, what is a good monthly goal for an overweight person in terms of weight loss? I started running and now I'm using kettlebells on non-running days. Excellent strategy, right? Running and kettlebelling. Kettlebelling will be your general physical preparedness and will align your core and your breathing and your glute power to be better for running. Alternating running, kettlebells, awesome plan. Kettlebelling, you can build up to the same time periods of not putting it down that you do with running. You can have heavy days where you have hard style. You can have endurance days where you do efficiency style. You can have running days where you work on sprints. You can have running days where you work on distance. Excellent overall strategy. When losing weight, let's talk about the math of losing weight. 3,500 calories equals a pound of body fat. So losing a pound a week is a really good overall strategy. That's a good, healthy way to do it. That's generally accepted. That puts you in 3,500 divided by 7 is 500 calorie deficit per day. And so 1 pound a week. If you wanted to lose 2 pounds a week, you'd put yourself in a 1,000 calorie deficit a day, which can be harder for most people. So 1 to 2 pounds a week is usually what people say, but that can alter as people's metabolism alters or as they get better at burning fat. So when people go to something like a ketogenic diet where they remove carbs from their diet and they work out the way that you're working out, that can work out very well for people. Or if they push it into intermediate fasting and they have their opening meals of the day, whatever their breaking of the fast meal is, be just protein. No, I love hard-boiled eggs and black tea. I'm weird. And then removing as many carbs as possible, people can lose more weight than that. But we always say generally 1 pound per week. As people's metabolism alters, it can change a lot faster than that. If they move to burning fat when they sleep by altering their diet and then altering their eating timing strategy, you can lose more than that. But if you lost 50 pounds in a year, that's awesome. That also changes quite a bit if people are very large. If somebody starts at, say, 300 pounds, they can lose more per week as their body self-regulates. Somebody who has 10 pounds to lose usually has a harder time losing that last 10 pounds than somebody who's 50 pounds overweight. The first 40 pounds tend to come off a lot easier for most people. And that is the point of the way that we train. It's progressive for years at a time. So we want people to build up healthy life skills by developing movement patterns that they know so well that they are always comfortable coming back to them. So my weight loss strategy with people is really to teach them skills and to give them equipment and to teach them how to train in every environment so that they can train more consistently so that they can get closer to their goals. Yeah, I think I said that right. Always got to check. Sometimes my language gets messed up. You guys will notice sometimes I flip like subject and object or subject and verbs in sentences and do some other weird things that my brain has been doing since I was 3. So I always have to check and make sure I say these things correctly. Is doing kettlebell exercise to failure a good idea? The goal is to build strength. Eric Olson, only if there's super stable movement patterns. If you're going to try and train double snatch to failure, that is a terrible, 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 terrible idea. You can train double overhead press to failure. You can train double front squat, probably close to failure because you can still bail out of it at some point safely. Training swinging weights to failure is a not great plan at all, because the thing that's going to fail is your grip. And the second thing that's going to fail is going to be your back, because those are the points that are under the most stress. The third thing that's going to fail is probably your shoulder. Training with kettlebells should be in the 60 to 80% range, like 99.9% of the time. You can do bodybuilding routines with kettlebells, but you're still way better off doing 60 to 80%. Training to failure is something that you can do with something that's really hard to hurt yourself with. Machines in a gym, all those machines in Gold's Gym, they have all the weird angles that don't exist in the real world. You can get on and crank on those until failure. The machine means you're not going to drop anything on your face. Same thing is true of like a deadlift. Like a deadlift is pretty safe. You need to have a lot of experience to deadlift really heavy weights, but you can bail out and you drop it and it goes straight down, right? Most stuff that's in the gym is more designed to be pushed towards failure. Kettlebells and clubs and maces are not really designed to be pushed to failure because they're endurance things. You can do it with something like front squat or overhead press, but I encourage people in kettlebells to work on kettlebell stuff with kettlebells. You can turn kettlebells into barbells. Great idea. With adjustable kettlebells, you can really make it super barbelly. But for the most part, I encourage people not to go to failure. You want to keep something in the bank. You don't want to fail and let go of the kettlebells because they could be 70-pound giant hunks of iron that fly out of your hand. The same thing is true of clubbing. We don't want to fail in a shield cast. If you failed in the back, there would be a weight swinging behind you going somewhere over there, which is not a great plan. You can fail on bench press if you have something that catches the bar. That's all fine. The more complex the movement becomes, the less you want to do it to failure. Can you do kettlebells to failure? Double swing clean to front squat. Sure, probably. Is it a great idea? No. You should train at 60 and 80% for the most part, just for pure safety. The goal is to keep you training more by not getting hurt. The more an object moves, the more likely you are to get hurt when it fails. The safer you are, you're safe at a gym for failure because the machine captures the load. If there's nothing there to capture the load, then train through volume instead and build up greater work capacity. You will get more muscle. Get to a 50-pound club. You're gonna get muscle. It's impossible to not get hard gainer muscle everywhere in your body. And then you could go to the gym and do pec deck and do all your chest exercises twice a week or something like that. And that would be much just generally safer. Generally way safer. Way safer. Already did the counting sets question. Swing question. I get pain in my middle back when I do two-handed start-stop swings that I do not get with regular swings. Do I just need to train more, or is there something I'm doing incorrectly? It sounds like your mid-lats are just firing up really hard from changing the angle of your hips. So it sounds like if you continue to train, maybe drop 2K and repeat the program and then build back up, it sounds like your mid-lats just might not be firing in that set down position or not firing as hard or being stressed more than they are in the standing standard swing. So I think it would go away. Of course, you should be cross-training with something like a Mace 360 or a two-handed shield cast with club to get that part of the lats working better. But it doesn't sound like there's anything massively wrong. If you said low back, it would be a much different answer. But mid back sounds like something in your lats wrapping around is just being stressed by that set down position. And you probably work your way through it over time. Cal Elijah is making a kettlebell club mace truck rack. Awesome. Send me pictures. Traveling with gear, like kettlebells, clubs, and mace are the most travelable things other than like say hydrocore or sandbag. But throwing them in the back of your truck is an awesome idea. Think about 2 adjustable kettlebells, even fully loaded is 140 pounds, plus 50 pounds of mace and 8X club handle puts it at, what is that? In the 200-pound range. You can easily put that in the back seat of a car because that's the weight of an adult. So you can really travel kettlebells and clubs very easily because they add up to 1 adult and they're not 700 pounds or anything. So love to see that rack, see what people come up with. More people doing this means more good ideas will come out. Will you make the HC Smith like you were doing for kettlebell? HC Smith? I don't know what that means. For doing the kettlebell these weeks from 0 to the stars and beyond? I'm sorry, I don't fully understand that question. Michael et al. Injury question. Do you have experience with shoulder injuries? Yes, I do. Specifically a partial torn rotator cuff. I'm on PT exercises for a few months and then plan on going to light club swings and kettlebells. I mean, this injury, partial rotator cuff tears are super common. The reason I tell people to club is inside circles, outside circles, and shield cast. You'll notice if you're in PT, mimic the band, pin your elbow to your hip, externally rotate. That's an outside circle. Pin your elbow to your hip, band inside is an inside circle load. So the moves you do in PT will eventually be replicated with club swinging. You're just gonna have to start light with clubs. That's fine. Start over and go down to a 10-pound. That's what I did when I ripped my knee in half. I had already been, single arming the 45 for a good amount of time when I got hurt, and I had 3 surgeries and didn't walk for 6 months, and had to go to physical therapy to learn to walk again and everything. You just go back to the basics and you start over with the lightweight and you run the whole program over again because you need time to recover. And if you try to skip steps, you will re-injure yourself and you will have to do it all again. So take the long path to recovering from any serious injury, the longest path you can make. The more time you have, adding 6 months to your training schedule is a small thing over the course of your 70-year lifespan or your 80-year, 100-year lifespan. Adding 6 months of rebuilding to make sure you don't get re-injured is super important. My knee will let me know if I'm pushing it too hard, but it's never been re-injured. I don't get any more injuries on this knee. It's already been full PCL disruption, full LCL disruption, popliteus tendon, gone, right? Meniscus, just very, very bad. You don't get chances to do this stuff over. Focus on your PT and go back to your light weights and go through the programs again, one step at a time, and do all the steps. Yes, club stuff is specifically there to help people rehab from injuries after they've done their PT and to help them prehab for future injuries by making sure the shoulder actually does what the shoulder is supposed to do. Bench press is not what the shoulder is supposed to do. As much as bench press is fun and it makes you look cool, that is not a throwing pattern. The rowing patterns, which is all kettlebells, which is all clubs and mace, see, I have to correct my language, is what the shoulder does. All right, let's find another one. We got some great questions today, guys. These are awesome. And we're already at 70 minutes. My God. Any good beginner mace programs you can recommend? I've been doing kettlebells and heavy clubs, 8X for about a year now. Brian, I don't know of any good mace programs. There are a lot of mace programs out there. My problem with a lot of the mace programs out there is they don't start at the beginning. This is something I talk about a lot, is that the majority of training, like mace programs that are out there, tend to focus on like the top 1% of athletes. Like I love a lot of my Mace flow friends, Jared Michael Thomas, Mace pick. I love watching those guys work every day. They go out and they train. Cheap equipment, $30 mace, $40 mace, infinite amount of training built into that. But they're very advanced athletes. Is there a basic program out there? Not yet. My Mace list is there to help people work on the basics because I want there to be a bridge between nothing, where people start, and what all these other Mace systems are doing. If you've been doing clubs, which is excellent, then you'll be able to jump into just Mace stuff. You could probably do one of the more advanced programs because you've been doing clubs for a year. Your inside circle, your outside circle, your shield cast, your mill, and your reverse mill are already there. So you don't need to break that out. Your injury likelihood is going way down because you've done the prep work for Mace. I am trying to build out, after we get through all this other stuff, build out specific Mace programs to start people from ground zero and take them up towards Mace flow. Because I just don't see the programs out there that support that the way that I think that they should be done. Maybe they exist and I just don't know about it, but I don't have recommendations for you at this time. The closest thing to a recommendation would be something like Steel Mace Vinyasa from Summer Huntington, but that's really a yoga program using Mace. It's not really a Mace program in the same way that I think about it. I consider a Mace program to be focused purely on the use of the Mace and the movement patterns of that. So the primary throwing movement patterns. You could look up almost anybody's Mace programs. Does Jared Michael Thomas have a program yet? I'll call him and ask him. He's my favorite. The guy can move like nobody's business. It's amazing every day. Bugs again. Hitting my mic. Randy Allen is following the basic Mace series. Excellent. We already did the counting reps question. Cal Elijah, the most important part of martial arts training is simulating getting hit and also hitting others. I'm pretty sure that's why you swung blunt machetes at people. Is absolutely true. So I have some issues with different types of martial arts because I did martial arts my whole life. And when I got under stress and somebody tried to stab me with a knife, I realized I didn't know exactly what I was doing because the way that I was trained wasn't helping me learn to respond to chaos. I did a lot of classical training. I did Aikijutsu. So I can talk about judo all day or jujitsu because I've done the older version of those arts, which means we have a same common language idea built in. So like I can jump into a John Wick, falls class because all those movements are moves that I did 25 years ago and I remember them because of the way I was trained. But what I wasn't trained with all of these things and what you're not trained with movie martial arts is pure response to chaos. So I train people with blunt machetes. We take real machetes, we put them on a grinder, we take the edge off of them, and then we start doing our attack defend drills. This is not recommended, by the way, in any way for people without an instruction. But what I'm doing is taking the martial arts that I know, and I'm trying to recreate them experimentally with people, and people with no experience. People who come to like our staff seminar get shoved right into this idea. We're trying to get people to identify incoming threats and figure out how to align their body naturally and quickly to learn how to defend and then respond to attack. Simulate being attacked and then simulate hitting back. But we're doing it with more force without padded weapons because we want people to really get the idea that getting hit with a machete is bad. So we use real ones and we take the edge off because suddenly the serious level skyrockets, right? People are very, very, very interested in paying attention when you do this type of training. It is not as fast as something like FMA is, Filipino martial arts. Filipino martial arts are doing stuff with sticks. So there's a lot less problem when you get hit with a stick than when you get hit with a machete, even a dull one. So think of it as taking the seriousness factor way up so that people learn to do the most important parts, which is block and get out of the way the best, the absolute best. And we break it out of drills like in Filipino martial arts where they have specific patterns and they have names. The problem is deviating from those patterns, which becomes an advanced skill in many martial arts. We don't start with any patterns. So that people don't learn to identify patterns, so they don't fall into patterns, so that they always learn to respond immediately to whatever the threat is. So, interesting idea, and yes, you are correct. The idea of fight training is to simulate getting hit or to inspire you to move to not get hit and then to hit something back. We do a similar thing with armored fight training. If you go on my Instagram and you go way back, like 4 or 5 years, you'll see a lot of armored fight training where I would work with actors or whoever came into my studio. Literally anybody could walk in. And if they said, I wanted to learn to fight for real, this happened a lot with models. Models end up in very bad situations all over the world. They want to know, they don't want to learn to box. They don't want to learn to put on gloves. They don't want to learn wushu. They want to learn to get out of there. So all of our training is specifically oriented and engineered for that end goal. The fight training, the armor training, using Spartan armor suits, and we upload and download certain parts of the armor for different types of strikes, putting on like a giant Thai boxing kicking and punching pad in the front, work on front kicks, work on them outside of the structure of normal martial arts where you stand in lines and they say 1 and you kick the pad and they say 2 and you kick the pad, and we put it into reaction drills where I move, they only get to kick with their right foot. Every time I'm a slightly different distance away, they have to learn how to adjust their footwork to get to the target. Then we do all left leg, then we do right left, then we do left right, then we do 2 rights, then we do 2 rights and left. And every time we change the input, what they're required to do, it changes the way their body works and the way that they will step. I never see anybody else doing this type of training. I have no idea why. It's so obviously how it should be done. There are a lot of other good systems out there. I think we just lost our gimbal for a second. Let's see if we can't get it to come back online. There we go. Apparently this gimbal time's out at 80 minutes. Still got battery on it. And we do it with all of our basics. So martial arts, I think, should be experimentally determined in the beginning. There should be a foundation of attack, defend, respond based on certain inputs and certain outputs. I would love to do a martial arts seminar, like a 5-day thing where we just did this. I just don't know if people will live through it. I don't know if I'll live through it. I used to teach this hour by hour. People would come in and I would assume that every hour I had a client was the last hour I would ever see them. So every hour was designed to teach people one hyper-specific thing and to make them do it in 50 different ways from 50 different inputs. Inputs vary, outputs always the same, so that they default to the smallest number of answers. This is different from traditional martial arts. In traditional martial arts, like in Aikijutsu, you could have several hundred named techniques, and each one was to respond to one specific input. That is a problem. It slows your brain down. That's what happened to me when somebody tried to stab me. My brain tried to categorize the movement along hundreds of attacks that I was supposed to know the correct response to. And in reality, my brain was just going through the filing system and couldn't find the right file. Because if people aren't trained in martial arts, they move chaotically and crazily, and it takes a split second for your brain to figure out what they're doing. My goal in fight training is to remove that part of the equation, and the inputs get crazier and crazier and crazier so that people learn to only do a limited number of outputs for all the inputs. Yeah, there you go, Mark Wildman Martial Arts in 5 minutes or less. And I would love to do that. We just need a bunch of kicking shields and like Muay Thai shin shields. And eventually, you know, we should do a seminar where it's like the first 5 days are just basics, and then eventually move to full armor. Full armor is way too hard for most people in the beginning, and they glitch out and they freeze. And it's really hard on me in the armor. Getting hit that much sucks. I used to get hit hundreds of times per session because you're encouraging people to hit you as hard as possible in response. You do an input. One of the classic ones, you know, start training models. Models start, they face you, you move around, they walk to the target, then you have them face away from you, they turn around, they observe, orient, decide, and act to find the target, they work on their footwork, they get to the target, then eventually we put them in a corner so they feel more trapped, then they turn around, they figure out how to move out of the corner, and then they attack, and then it gets crazier and crazier and crazier as it goes, and that's the point. But they're over time encouraged to remove the brake from themselves to hit harder. My job in that equation is to get harder and harder and harder until they knock me out or knock me over. Hard on me, but that's the point of being a martial arts coach. At some point, if you don't get hit, you're not helping your clients learn. The important part to me is that female circus performers and models who are traveling around the world in dark alleys at night are able to hit as hard as freaking possible in the shortest period of time based on every input I can think of. Yeah, so there was a Mark Wildman rant on martial arts. I know, I get crazy with this stuff. Everything I do is an engineering equation. Everything I do is an engineering equation. Okay, we got some great questions today, guys. If I'm not getting to yours, I'm sorry. We'll eventually get to all of them. We had some fun ones, though. The martial arts ones are fun. I probably shouldn't talk about that stuff that much because it might encourage people to do stupid things. But I want to teach that as seminars, and I want to teach a 5-day staff, a 5-day machete, a 5-day open hand, a 5-day car. I would love to set up a month. And that's one of my primary goals as a trainer is to get a place where I can do that stuff. And nobody can tell me I'm not allowed to do it. Get, you know, a house and a big barn, an indoor arena in the middle of nowhere that we can pull cars in and out of, that we can set up different scenarios. I would eventually love to, you know, have an elevator and people learn to fight in the elevator, and we go back and we repeat all the training stuff over again in different environments. And there's a learning process like there is with kettlebells, like there is with clubs. And the way that you repeat those processes, you repeat with different weights. When it comes to fight training, you repeat the same process over again in different environments. It gets super fun. This time last year, we were staying up by FlowShala north of Seattle, and I was living in a treehouse because it's awesome. And we just built a training group, and we were doing machete fighting every day in the Pacific Northwest rainforest at 7 a.m. until 9. Got to tell you, that was clutch. Unlevel surfaces, crazy ground, logs to jump over, moving through the forest, up and down hills. Paradise. Paradise by the Dashboard Lights. Meatloaf, 1970 something. Do I know about Kensu Easy Vest and Hydroplate? What's your thought? If you don't know them, they are water loadable plates, 4 plates of 35-pound max weight and body weight vest. I have not heard of those. If somebody would send me a link to those or link me to an Instagram page or something, that would be great. It sounds like a super fun idea. 4 plates of 35-pound max weight. I wish the max weight on a plate was higher. I wish that the max weight on it was 70 pounds, which would make it very big, just from design issue, because the point of a water-loaded object is that it's half empty, so the water moves around. I love this idea because Olympic lifting is fun. I don't do it because I'm never in a place where I have barbell or Olympic lifting stuff. My friends do it all the time. And it would just be fun to do Olympic lifting with water filled so that when you do your power clean, all the water slams back into you. But if you fill the object up all the way with water, the water stops shifting. What's the point? I'm waiting on the new HydroCore bag that goes on top of the 8X Mace. A big water-filled bag so that when you do your 360s with the 8X handle, go to Maurizio's HydroCore page on Instagram and you'll see this thing. It's awesome. I can't wait for that. Because that just like takes your light mace that you travel with and you can add load to it to get back up to some crazy weights and introduce even more stability. I love the idea of water-filled plates. There's ice vent plates. They're like military armor plates, but you fill them up with water and you put ice in them so that guys standing in armor in the desert have ice front and back of their body to help keep them cool so they can manage longer. That's another idea of water-filled plate. And then eventually the ice in there turns to water and you can drink it. Super fun. I love that as a design issue as well. Ice vents, ice plates. I can't remember what it's called, but I love the idea of water-filled stuff. They are fun ideas. Water shifts. And it makes it more interesting each rep. You'll learn to adapt to it, but it is interesting. Carl Elijah. I feel like I answer a lot of his questions because they usually look like good questions. Mark, when first starting an inside-outside club swing, how important is it that we accelerate the club with enough velocity to get straight arm extension before the swing arc begins? You don't have to accelerate that much. You just have to push your arms until they're straight. But straight arms is very important because it lets you know that you've rotated all the way. If one elbow is bent, you're doing something with a shoulder or you're not rotating all the way, and you're going to do something weird to your spine. The point of inside circle and outside circle is you're going to, I'm talking two hands here, is to rotate the hips to point the direction you want to go. Ankles, knees, hips. Spine stays generally flat. The club stays generally in front of you. And if both arms lock out, you've rotated everything far enough. If one arm is bent or something like that, then this is not in place. You need to draw that shoulder back and lock it out. When doing single arm, you need to achieve straight elbow lockout before the swing. If you try to do the swing with bent arm and it impacts shock loads at the bottom, let's call that not great. It's not a great plan. Any shock load on the elbow at the bottom of a swing is bad. We want to get our bones to the point where they line up so our tendons and ligaments can do their job properly by hitting straight arm. So it is very important. You don't need to accelerate it that hard to get to straight arm. You can do slow inside circles and outside circles, but the straight arm before the swing phase is pretty important to maintaining elbow health. So here's a comment from Cal Elijah. Steel Mace Flow Level 1 from Leo Savage has some good fundamentals. True. My problem with those, it's not really a problem, is that there's not a big emphasis on inside circles and outside circles, separate from everything else. So he's in Steel Mace Flow, you really should know inside circles and outside circles. I haven't seen the updated programs. I went to a Leo Savage seminar several years ago at what was that place? Somewhere in the valley. It's like a CrossFit gym, but all the wodes are from like nerd shit. Maybe it was Nerd Strong or something like that. So think of it as CrossFit, where they base the workouts on like Link's Great Adventures or on Lord of the Rings or whatever. They still don't have enough Shieldcast in any of their programming, but that's just me quipping. But Leo Savage, like I went to his seminar, 4-hour seminar, something like that. But I didn't see inside circles and outside circles separated from everything else. Maybe they are doing that now. Maybe I just don't know about it. But if you already have done club, one of my club programs, then sure, you could jump right into that because you will already know inside circles and outside circles and Shieldcast from doing my training, right? When I write programs, I'm trying to keep basic ideas all the way down to basics so that people can jump into those, what I consider to be more advanced, more complex systems, and have much more success doing them. So yes, excellent. Try out that. Try Steel Mace level 1. Here's a good one. Shock 53. How are your adjustable kettlebells holding up? Do you think they will stay tight under heavy use for years? Mine are great. I mean, I'm addicted to these things. The 2 original ones I got from Kettlebell King, what is that, like, how long ago was that? I don't know, 18 months, 2 years? They're awesome. They're back in Ohio right now, and I've been doing double kettlebell programs and like double kettlebell endurance programs with them. So that means that they smack each other a lot. The paint gets scratched up, but that happens on every kettlebell. I think that they're going to stay tight. I mean, the threads are thick. I don't see a problem with them with normal use. I think you would have to go out of your way to mess them up with normal use. Maybe they'll go bad in 5 years. Don't know. If they do, it doesn't matter. It will still be well worth the cost. One kettlebell at less than $300, replacing 19 other kettlebells, is a deal that you can absolutely not pass up. From an economic standpoint, it is the best deal ever in all of human history for fitness, as far as I can tell. Because you have 19 weights. If you have 2 of them, you are good to go for a long time. Is my other one out here? I have 2 more. I have now 3 in Los Angeles. I got 2 more bells of steel, and I got one from SoCal Kettlebells because I needed something to use because I was freaking out. I'm gonna get another one. I'm setting them up like cachet points around the country from like a Jason Bourne novel, where a guy travels and he loses all of his stuff and he goes to a bus station. He opens a locker and it's got a change of clothes and a bunch of passports and money and a gun in it or something. Like I'm doing that with fitness equipment. And I'm taking kettlebells and I'm dropping them off in different parts of the country where I go a lot because I kind of travel around the country in loops. So I've got 2 adjustables now at Gambate Fitness. I've got 2 in an apartment in K-Town. No matter which side of town I'm on in LA, I can swing in and knock out some sets with an infinite amount of training. I have 2 in the back of my truck back east. I have 2 in my basement back east on the farm, and I'm gonna get another 2 to put in my other truck. I am loading out. I love the adjustable kettlebell, the Kettlebell Kings and the Bells of Steel, and now the SoCal's kettlebells. Fantastic. Bells of Steel will be doing some, am I allowed to talk about this yet? I think I am. I don't know, we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna be doing some Mark Wildman edition bells, just for fun. Because it's fun. Because adding a little bit cost to something that replaces 19 weights, I think that people will still enjoy it. I love them. They're holding up incredibly well. I don't think that they will get beat up. I don't think that you will be able to damage the threads unless you beat on the threads with a hammer or did something crazy to them. And the bottom spindle, there's a screw that goes up through the bottom that goes to the central spindle, which holds the bottom on. I don't know how you could hurt it. I mean, maybe you could, subject it to heat or fill it with sand or something stupid. But other than that, normal use, I don't think you can hurt them. Normal use. Throw them off a building, I'm sure you could hurt them. You can hurt almost anything if you throw it off a high enough building. Robert Pankowski is experiencing lower back pain after doing 124 kilogram around the world warm-up. Did I say do 100? I thought I said do a minute each way or 20 each way, which would be 40 broken up, and to do a second set, which would be another 20 each way, which would be 80. So I'm not fully understanding your numbers here, Robert. And did you do 100 straight through? Did you do only one direction? If you were to do both directions, you would write 100/100. And I put the weight in front. So I do weight, sets, reps. Weight, what are you using? How many sets are you doing? The reps. 100x24 is a weird way to write. I don't fully understand it. And he has lower back pain. Should he wait to recover? Yes, wait to recover. Should you lower the weight? Probably. Should you lower the reps? Probably. If you're having lower back pain, your glutes are not on. You are not stabilizing the lowest part of your core when you're doing that. If your lower back hurts, you're dumping the core as the weight goes around. Go down in weight, 20, 20, do some halos in between to reset, do 20 and 20. That's the max that I want people to do on that. You could do 1,000, but it's better as a warm up, and then you do something more useful like swings. So yes, lower the weight, and focus on squeezing your glutes to protect your lower back. If you're having lower back pain with around the world, lower the weight. If you just lower the weight and do less reps and start over again, then you will allow your body a chance to learn to fire those muscles as the movement pattern happens. So much of what we do in coaching is repeating patterns. There's a reason, like in our time under tension programs, we have people repeat 4 to 6 times per weight, and we have multiple rounds per workout. Classic 4 rounds, repeating the learning pattern done 6 times would be 24 learning opportunities per weight. That's so people's body has an opportunity to go through trying to fire the muscles in different patterns. As people master a movement, their body gets faster at making those connections and firing the muscles in order. So if you're having lower back pain there, lower the weight and give yourself more time to learn how to fire your core in that position. Roger Norton, man, we're already at 97 minutes. Roger Norton, mill question. How important is it to do full stop technical reps? At what point do you recommend going more fluid in your reps? Excellent question, Robert. Everybody starts with technical in the beginning because they need to put their elbow in the right spot, especially as they go up in weight. You can get away with terrible technique with a 2-pound club. 2 to 4 pounds, you can do whatever you want. You can move your shoulders almost anywhere. 15 pounds gets more serious. You need to start putting your wrist and your elbow in the right way. Do through all the training. Build your mill and reverse mill. You always start as technical because you're exhaling when your elbow touches the hip. You're breathing more, you're slowing yourself down, you're focusing on the catch. Then you repeat it with the 20, the 25, the 30, the 35, the 40. You build up. The technical is super important when learning the technique so you don't start ripping your shoulder out of the socket and you learn to breathe. Over time, just by repeating the cycle, a volume cycle followed by a density cycle for mill and reverse mill, you will notice yourself moving from technical to performance. It's designed that way for a reason. And then you go up in weight and you will go back to technical and focus on rebuilding your basics each time. Everything we do is meant to trick people into doing the basics so many times that it is impossible to forget or impossible to do wrong. So yes, it will bleed from technical to performance as you do it. Then when you go up in weight and you start the idea over again, it will go back to technical. It goes from technical to performance. Usually when people start altering their breathing subconsciously, they will take out all the exhales and they will change where they inhale and exhale. And usually there's about 4 steps to that. And I don't make videos on it because I don't want people to think about it ahead of time. I want it to happen naturally and them to just be like, oh crap, I'm breathing totally differently because now I'm being breathed by the movement. So we always start with technical. That's what we coach. People will end up in performance just by repeating the movement patterns over time. But the technical is there to teach you how to do the catch properly so that you can go up in weight, so that you can get more out of training. Paul, any trips to New England in your seminar plan? Don't know. No, I don't know. I'm not a New England guy. Like I'm like Ohio West. Like I've ridden a bicycle back and forth between there. I've driven back and forth there a dozen times. I spent a lot of time out there in that space. Much further east than western Pennsylvania, I don't get very far. I would love to, but I don't know where I would have a seminar. If somebody has a place where they will let me do what I want to do on the East Coast, I would love to do East Coast because it would be an excuse for me to expand my mental maps into another part of the country. Yeah, if anybody knows, I would love to know, but I don't know anybody with a gym over there. John Doe, any thoughts on Bulgarian bags? Love them. Fantastic. Bulgarian bags come from wrestlers, and they come specifically from wrestlers trying to recreate farm boy strength. So, bag of grain, 50 pounds, grab it by the corners, swing it, right? That's kind of the origin of the Bulgarian bag. And then they made it out of leather, so it would be more durable than a burlap bag, and they put the handles on it so they wouldn't rip off all the time. And then they made a bunch of different sizes so people could do progressive training, and they could start at a 10, go to a 20, go to a 30, and work on their version of a shield cast, their version of a 360, which is that big around the head swing. Awesome. Love Bulgarian bags. Once again, the goal is to learn to pick it up and not put it down. So once again, you build into that endurance weightlifting idea that we talked about all the way back at the beginning of this. The goal of kettlebells is to learn to not put them down. The goal of clubs is to learn to not put them down. The goal of Mace is to learn to not put them down. Bulgarian bag falls right into that idea. The movement patterns change slightly because the angles change slightly, and that's fantastic. The more of these apparatus you learn, the better your overall general physical preparedness becomes so that you can become better at doing something like BJJ. Going back to the comment earlier, just roll every day. Great, just roll every day. Do Bulgarian bags for 10 minutes every day as well, and your strategy goes way up, way up. Absolutely love Bulgarian bags. Hydrocore is a Bulgarian-like bag implement that's, is portable and has a different grip, which I really like. The more different types of endurance grips you learn, once again, the better off you are. Tony Mind, what is the best way for a woman to jump from an 8K to a 12K in the Turkish get-up? Break it down into all the pieces and do it one rep, one step at a time. The best way to do it is to buy a 10K. They're $30. You can get a 10K for super cheap. The best way to do it is a 10K. The next best way to do it is to break it down into individual movement patterns, pick it up, do one rep, set it down, turn it into pure strength training. All right, people are talking in the comments, not to me. That's fine. That's excellent. Everybody's building community through conversation. Fitness and fandom, eh? Gonna love this question, I am sure. Mark, have you seen Prey yet? I have not seen Prey yet, but they do. I have seen that there's a Comanche language dub for it, which I'm going to watch it in English, then I'm going to watch it in Comanche. I don't know anybody who still speaks Comanche, but I have a bunch of friends in the north of Canada who speak First Nations languages up there, which are like 5 language families away. But I appreciate that somebody's making this movie with a Comanche dub. Running through the woods, jumping over logs, carrying, throwing axe. Boom. Everything I want in my life. Plus fun fighting stunts and Predator, so fun for us nerds. I have not seen Prey yet, but this is an example of what we're trying to build to in fitness, right? Running through the forest and throwing stuff. This is on my list of things to do when I actually get a place where nobody can tell me what to do, is to set up a running axe throwing course the way that it used to be done in colonial America. Both the natives and the European settlers were famous for this, and this is part of the original like Mountain Man games or the Long Hunter games. Long Hunter games, used to see these at rendezvous where, think of it like historical European martial arts, but for like early America. So think long hunting. So hand built, muzzle loading, like Lancaster, Pennsylvania Lancaster rifles, the best rifle. And then having all your gear on and running through the forest and shooting and reloading on the run, and then throwing axes and throwing knives as you run. Awesome. Absolutely love it. Running shoulder dynamics are not something I understand. I'm not going to lie, I don't understand how it's done. I believe I threw tomahawks and shovels and knives as a kid instead of darts. We lived out in the middle of nowhere. We had a big throwing block hanging from a tripod by a chain. So chunk of old tree, painted on the red, white, the bullseye, and it hung in the backyard. And we had a bucket of tomahawks and cold steel throwing shovels and just every knife we could find. Old buck throwing, not throwing knives, just knives, right? And we would stand out there at sunset and we would throw knives, right-handed, left-handed, whatever. My left hand now feels like it's not going to throw well at all, but my right hand remembers. I would like to build up to obstacle course tomahawk throwing. There's something I read a long time ago, and this really sticks with me because it links to First Nations and European settlers' use of the tomahawk. The Romans carried their throwing spears, javelin, pilum. I'm losing this word. But they had a soft metal tip with a leaf-shaped blade on the top, and they had a wooden handle, and they were meant to be thrown, and then they were supposed to bend so that they hit a target and they bent, so they were hard to get out. And then at the end of the battle, the Romans would go out and they would pull it out of the body, straighten it back out, and then that's how they led the charge. So the Romans, the thing that they did differently than, like, say, the Greek phalanx, was they opened with a salvo. Every guy threw 3 spears. 100 guys with 3 spears is a lot of spears coming at you. Then they would run up and essentially football charge them with their giant shield and close, and then use the stabby knife to close that distance. The Gauls used a similar idea, and they carried 3 belt axes, as I am told. I read this somewhere. Shield, right, post-Roman era in the Dark Ages, and that weird time between, say, 400 and, say, 1100, where kind of, not a lot happened in Europe. It was really just mostly tribal warfare and the feudal system, but in a really weird way. That they, round shield instead of Roman shield. Gladius became, Gaelic sword, which became the spatha from the Roman cavalry, but then 3 throwing axes. So it would be shields up, throw 3 tomahawks, either stable or as you are advancing, go to the sword and close. And I love this idea because it exemplifies so much about what separates human movement from other types of movement. The shielding arm, the shield cast that we practice all the time, the shielding arm up, the other arm, whether in throwing pattern or whether in an overhead strike pattern, is what the shoulder is designed to do. So training all that stuff is prime athletic skill. So all of our kettlebell clubs, mace, build you up to that. But eventually I want to have my own running tomahawk course where we can do all the fun stuff. And it changes a little bit every day. Targets get further away, they get closer. Maybe they're on a rail and they move towards you and boom, and it comes at you and you throw a tomahawk at it. Yes. So anyway, big diversion. The movie Prey. It's on my list, but I'm not letting myself do anything other than YouTube answering questions and filming for the next 2 weeks because I am on a mission to get all of this content done. Tons of it. I'm trying to get 4 programs totally shot so they can go into edit. I started the original shooting for Two-Handed Club in September of 2020. So it is 23 months later. I have to finish it. The opening footage, the original footage I shot, we're going to try to use it because it's super cool. I shot it in the high desert of Colorado. And so you can see the mountains like 50 miles in the background. And it's cool. I did it all myself, so it's not the best. Because I was setting up the cameras myself. I couldn't see the frame. I was just setting it up and going. We're going to try and cut that together to use it because one camera is pointed at one series of mountains, Wolf Creek Pass, and then the collegiates are behind it. In some shots, you can kind of see it with the cloud covers there. And the other way is the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, which I love. Next year, I want to get up into the Sangre de Cristos because there's a big dirt bike trail that runs along the spine of that section from like New Mexico all the way up to Salida. And that is what I bought a KTM 690 for. Anyway, yes. Knee injury question. My father has damaged the cartilage on the lateral side of one knee where muscle and tendons stop. His knee is collapsing. How do you safely approach club and kettlebell training for that? You start with a super light weight. You point your feet straight ahead. You go. You do all of your physical therapy first. I can speak on this topic. I have injured my knee worse than anybody I know, even NFL players. Key thing, go to therapy, let them do all their therapy stuff, and then you start over with your feet pointed straight ahead. I cannot emphasize that enough. And you go down in weight. The 8X makes this super easy because you can start at 3.5. Inside circle, outside circle, shield cast. Build up to the point where you're doing inside circle, outside circle, shield cast with at least a 10. Then you would start introducing the pendulums into that movement pattern. Pendulum, inside, outside, pullover. And then you need to walk it up. You need to work on those basic movement patterns forever. But you need to start with a light enough weight that you're not going to re-injure yourself. And you need to make sure your feet are in the right spot. If your feet are in the wrong spot, if they are turned out 10 degrees and your heel is lifting off the ground, you are not going to make it better. You are going to make it worse. Don't make your life worse. Make your life better. These problems can be solved, and that's why we're doing all of this. This is a post-rehab strategy that we talk about. The post-rehab strategy is the same as the advanced athletic development strategy because you start with a 3.5 and you get to a 25-pound single-arm club. Problem solved. Let's find, man, we're at 112 minutes. Let's give it one more. Let's give it 8 more minutes here. Find a really fun one. Stephen Greenwood, this is just a compliment, but I'm going to read it anyway because I think it sounds good and it's very positive. Thanks for your content because it has transformed his training and improved his athletic ability. And for him, better, and it allows him to perform better physically as a paramedic. That is the idea, right? Think paramedic, on call, crazy shift times, unknown amounts of load, unknown amounts of sleep, all kinds of unknowns in there. You need to be strong now. You need to be able to have your training wherever they have your ambulance stationed. Like some places like have mathematically figured out the best place to put an ambulance, and it could be in a McDonald's parking lot. And so you should be able to like have a club in the front cab and jump out and do 20 minutes a couple of times a day to make your body work so that you can do your job, do your job better and be in less pain. That is awesome. So thank you very much, sir, for watching and for training. We need more paramedics and firefighters and police officers and farmers and everybody in the world to do good basic training. If everybody is out of pain and they can do their job better, society gets better, right? It's just math, I guess. So thank you, Stephen. Stephen. Sorry, I watched too much Vampire Diaries. I'm always saying Stephen. There it is. The Romans threw plumbata. So there's a couple of things that Romans threw. They threw the spear that bent off, and they also threw the deadly darts, right? Which were in that game that we had as kids where you threw the dart up in the air and they got rid of it because it was falling down on people and killing them. Same thing, they had a big pocket full of darts, and like you could underhand throw a bunch of them really fast. You get 100 guys underhand throwing these big metal darts with big feathers on them, and they just come down as dropping missiles on the opposing force. Yeah, super cool. All these things, throwing patterns, are so interesting to study throughout history or to look at throughout history. KM, question. What do you think of Nordic curls and monkey feet for hamstrings? Also, the importance of strong hip flexors. Nordic curls would be where you would get into a full kneeling position. You would trap your feet underneath something, and then you would extend your body down and bring it back up. It's a hamstring isolation curl. I think they're fine. Do I think that they're necessary for 99.999% of the population? No, I don't think that they're necessary like almost at all for a common athlete. Maybe for a superstar 1% of 1% athlete, sure, they're great. They're another way to help people work on their hamstring strength and their body control. Do I think that they're necessary? Not even a little bit. I mean, GHD sit-up is way better idea. GHD back extension, Roman extensions where you lay your body flat on a bench, you drop your knees down and you extend your body straight back. I think all those are way better than Nordic curls. Not that Nordic curls are bad, they're just very specific. And an athlete needs to be incredibly strong and well trained before they can pull that off. The odds of injury, if you are not prepared for that, are very high. You can't make your body lighter. You can throw some bands on and try to take some load off and some other things. But for the most part, you already need to be incredibly strong to do something like Nordic curls. What was the second part of that question? I lost the question. Then there's an atlateral question I saw down there. I'm going to talk about that one. Also, the importance of strong hip flexors. Absolutely, hip flexors are super important. So monkey feet are these new kind of like ski boot things that you can bolt in like a dumbbell. I believe that's what you're talking about. And having people do certain types of knee raises in order to strengthen their hip flexors. Excellent idea. I think it's more useful than Nordic curls for the most part. And I think something like monkey feet exists because people aren't practicing martial arts. If you were to practice any historical Asian martial art with kicking, you wouldn't need that. It would help maybe for a little bit of time, but is it necessary forever? Probably not. You would do walking drills, and you'll see this flashing palm, outside crescent, inside crescents. Crescents in different patterns are all specifically there to help people rotate their hip joint in an actually sport-specific, useful way while strengthening their hip flexor. So I think monkey feet are a great idea, and I think people can invest in that after they invest in kettlebells, clubs, and maces, and things like hydrocore or Bulgarian bags. After that, monkey feet, sure. Then probably you could put monkey feet between the primaries and between like a rogue monster rack, because the rogue monster rack costs, $1,500 to $2,000. Monkey feet are cheap. So yeah, sure, monkey feet I think are a great idea. I think they're much more useful than a Nordic curl, and I think that they will help people who don't participate in historical European historical martial arts, which is 99.999% of everybody, don't do that. So I think it's a great idea for them. So monkey feet, I love them. I see them all the time. And I think that it's a good thing for people to put into training because they lack these other historical types of training. Randy Allen, machete fighting sounds like Messer fencing. It is. Machete and Messer, gross Messer. Messer being the Germanic word. So machete, agricultural peasants, big knife with flat scales, and the handles are slabbed on from the side. It doesn't have a tang. Messer and the various versions of that throughout history are single-edged peasants, big knife. Messers would probably have more of a cross guard on them, but the definition of a knife back then was the slab side handles. This is how poor people have been subverting rich people, controlling them for years. So many places in Europe, historically, only rich people were allowed to carry swords because they were maintaining their power by having swords. So peasants got knives, just like they did in China. They got then bigger knives, then they got bigger knives, but they kept the construction the same. So Messer fencing is very similar to Chinese Dao, broadsword, or peasant's big knife is similar to machete. I do it with machete because machete exists everywhere on the planet, and machete fighting is still done. I don't see anybody running around videos attacking people or still fighting with Messers. We'll be back there in 15 years. I'm like 99% sure we'll be back to machetes and Messers. But if you look at gang violence in Mexico, machetes. If you look at violence in South America, machetes. If you look at violence in Africa, all over, machete, 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 machete. So I want people to learn to identify it specifically, visually, and in their hand. And so in my studio, we used to have machetes from all over the world. And we would get online and we would find 24-inch Latin machetes, 18-inch US military machetes, bolo machetes, all these different types of machetes, and we would train with all of them so that people learn to identify that that is something that their brain knows how to defend with immediately. Because I want people, we're trying to remove the scary part of machete. If people train with even like Messers and then somebody hands them a machete, there's a lag as their brain tries to figure out that it's the same thing. Advanced practitioners will figure it out, but I'm always working with the lower sections of the population training-wise. People come to me when they have absolutely no training, so I want their foundation of training to be the best it can be in the least amount of time, because that's always the equation I'm trying to solve. Steve Kubin, not a lot happened from 400 to 1100. Dude, the Viking Age. I'm not saying stuff didn't happen. I'm saying stuff didn't get written down, guys. Guys, everything happened. People lived entire lives. Kingdoms rose and fell. Arthurian legend. It's not that stuff didn't happen. It's that we don't have great records from the end of the Roman occupation or the Roman area of Europe. When Rome fractured around 400 with, who was it? Constantine, in this symbol, I shall conquer, the cross-hilted sword, the sign of the cross. When he moved Rome to Constantinople, into that middle way, the Rome ended as a lot of people think of it. We know Constantinople thinks that they were the Holy Roman Empire until like 1500, but we don't think that. A lot happened, but when they pulled back from the UK in that 300 to 400 range, they pulled out the Roman force, and whoever was left started building principalities and feudal systems where they protected an amount of land and they built a stronghold. That time, a lot of stuff happened there, but a lot of it wasn't written down. Of course, the Viking Age happened from 800 to whatever, 950 to 1000. All of that stuff happened, but we have less understanding of it than we did. That's why it was called, you know, a lot of it was referred to as the Dark Ages, other than a bunch of weird climactic stuff that happened. It's not that stuff didn't happen. It's that we don't have great records of what the Gauls were doing in 750. Let's keep going. Hi from Italy, Omar. Thanks for your video. I discovered the adjustable kettlebell. They are perfect. Thanks for your videos. Okay, way to go, Omar. You have training forever. Once you have an adjustable kettlebell, you're not going to run into the end of it. Maureen Venables. Older lady, thank you for your content. She's an old lady trying to get fitter, not easy with back, knee, elbow pain, but trying to stick it out, hoping to get better. Maureen Venables, 8X Club. 8X Club. You can work on your inside circles, your outside circles, and your shield cast, and you can start with 3.5 pound weight, which is light enough that out of shape people who are older can still self-coach their way through a lot of it if you keep track of your sets. And you go from 3.5 to 5 to 6.25 to 7.5, and you can walk your way up and do the two-handed club programs. Also, kettlebells. ProKettlebell.com has extremely light, extremely awesome kettlebells. Side note, they are not cheap. They have 4K and 6K competition bells, which are perfect. Like, the real problem people have trying to get fitter is access to good equipment, especially in the I'm older or deconditioned range. I'm spending a lot of time trying to find and encourage people to get product that will help them solve those issues. If you get your hands on a bad kettlebell that doesn't fit your wrist properly or it lays on your wrist joint, then you are not likely to continue training. So the kettlebells from ProKettlebell.com are expensive. I understand that. I wish that they were cheaper, but they are the best thing on the market. So until they make a couple million of them, the price has to stay high. But that is the best absolute place to get something that will definitely work and that you could learn. If you learn to pick up a 4K kettlebell, worked on your basics, you got a 4, a 6, an 8, and a 10, even if you just got a 4 and a 6 to start, you could learn to not put a 6K down for 30 minutes and you would learn to be in incredible shape. That could be a 5-year plan. The goal that we're always trying to do is get people a 5-year plan. I'm trying to turn this all into a technical writing engineering manual to start from zero and get people up towards that 90%. Because I think a lot of other people, every other training company I know does 90 to 100% really well. But I don't think people are really doing the 0 to 90% well. Good, guys. Excellent. Let's go ahead and wrap it there because we're at 127 minutes. My God, I gotta do shorter ones of these. I get really into these topics. You guys ask very, very good questions, and that is the point, is that you ask me questions and I get to learn to articulate my answers better so I can become a better communicator, so we can reach more people, so more people can regain control of their own health and fitness. So they don't have to travel to do it. They're not reliant on anybody else. They can self-coach and they have durable gear that they can use at the end of a dirt road or in their living room. The goal is to build this out and to try to fix the world's problems through making people independent health and fitness wise. Is that a way to say it? I think that's a way to say it. So the more you guys ask me questions, the better I get at answering them, the better I get at communicating, the more videos we can make, the more we can expand the idea of returning people to self-reliance for their health and their fitness. Yeah, see, my end speech is getting better too. It's getting much better. Thank you guys very much for staying with me and listening to all this jibber jabber and listening to me when I mess up sentences. I do have speech impediments, so I work through this as much as I can, and I flip subject and object and weird things in sentences and stuff like that. I get better at it the more I work on it. Thank you very much, guys, and have a good day. Go train. Have an adventure.